Okay, so one more thing regarding the channel box. I have duplicates of this box here. Shift D to duplicate, remember how that works. And then the channel box will relate to only one object at a time. Whereas in Maya, this isn't the case. Let me show you what I mean. So if you select all these objects in Maya, if you sweep through those values and hit a value of 2, then all of them would scale up. But in this case, only one of them. Blender doesn't work that way. So you have to do them one at a time. If you want to do all of them at the same time, you'd have to use the keyboard shortcut of scale by 2 or whatever, right? And then they will all scale up. And of course, depending on the pivot points that we discussed earlier. But just be aware that the transform, this channel box doesn't work that way in Blender. If you're coming from Maya or you're aware of that from another application that might work the same way. It doesn't do that in Blender. Okay, so now the next thing down the list is I'm gonna collapse view and grease pencil just to highlight 3D cursor right here. The 3D cursor actually, very much like the location and rotation and scale channels, has its own sort of channel box for its location. So as you're clicking it around here, you see that value is changing, right? Okay, and so if I sweep through there and just hit 0, it'll snap it back to the center. Okay, and so there are some times, I find quite a few times actually, that I might, let's say, have my cursor off on some place in space, and I want it to be there. I found a way to get it exactly where I wanted it there, but I didn't have a real clear way and clean way to get it back to 0 on one of the axes. So let's just say I wanted to mirror something from there. So I would just go to Y and hit 0, and then it would pop it right back in the center. So if I go to top and hit the 5 for orthographic, you can see it's snapped right to the center on the Y, right? Even though I have a more somewhat obscure position on the other axes, right? So that's something to be aware of there. It's a nice handy little tool because you can put it wherever you want. You can have exact locations where you put it, and you can tab through it just like the other ones. Excuse me, just go like that. So now I have it in the precise place, so that if I'm set to 3D cursor and I want to rotate something from that precise spot in space, there are other ways to do that, which I'm going to get into in snapping, but it's good to know you can also manipulate the 3D cursor to be in an exact spot that you specify. And that's part of the power of the 3D cursor, is that it's totally independent of any selection. It's independent of anything. It's its own position in space, and it's super easy to move around and be precise with compared to other apps that I've used. So there you have it. So that's going to cover all this stuff about manipulating objects in the normal sense. From here, I think we're going to move on to snapping modes and different methods of snapping things, and we'll talk about that later.